Hey everybody, Mo here, and welcome to another deck guide for dummies video. And in this video, I have probably the second most requested deck list, and that is going to be Draven Burn. Now, this deck I am a very big fan of. This is actually the most played deck I have on my account. This is the deck that I played most of the time when I did my unranked to masters stream, and this is the deck I recommend to a lot of people whenever they ask me what decks are good to climb. I always recommend Bannerman or this deck. So in this video, I'm going to explain to you guys what this deck is, what it tries to do. I'm going to give you general tips for the deck and how to play it at a higher level, and I'm going to do something different and go through each stage of the game, turn-based, and tell you what you should be doing on each turn. And then, of course, we're going to finish everything up with a quick mulligan guide, and then that'll be the end of the video. So let's jump right in. So what is this deck, and what is it trying to do? So this deck is Draven Burn. It's one of the fastest decks in Legends of Runeterra at the moment. The deck is very simple to pilot, but there's room for a lot of skill to get involved. Like, the difference between a gold Draven Burn player and a Masters Draven Burn player is pretty big, but that doesn't mean the deck can't carry you out of diamond on its own. I used almost this exact list to hit rank 7 in the previous patch, and the deck just wants to end the game before your opponents get to play the game. That's what this deck is good at. It's good at punishing your opponents if they're playing, I call them for fun decks, or if they're just playing a really bad deck, it's good at punishing those. If your opponent's playing a slow deck, like if they're playing a Lux Heimerdinger deck that doesn't do anything for the first 3 turns, if they're playing Ezreal Karma that doesn't put any chump blockers down, or even if your opponent is playing something good like Bannerman, but they just so happen to stumble for the first couple turns, this deck is just really, really good at punishing your opponent and taking a lead and just running away with the lead. So it tries to do this by playing really early creatures and aggressive creatures that can push for a lot of power on turns 1, 2, and 3, and then that will lower the life total low enough to where you can just burn them out for the final push, turns 4, 5, and 6, and onward. So that's all this deck tries to do. It's very simple. It's just your standard aggressive deck, play fast creatures, finish the game with direct damage. Here are some tips for the deck. Always look for ways to maximize your damage output. Sometimes this means waiting a turn or two to attack instead of attacking every turn you can. Sometimes it just means open attacking, even if you could put down a nice big unit in hand. Every point of damage matters, so you just have to try and figure out what is the way to guarantee the most amount of damage. If shooting their creature guarantees you more damage, then do it. If open attacking guarantees you more damage because you think, oh, if I play one creature, then they can play a House Spider, now they have 2 blockers. Or maybe they can play Yone and stop my attack, or maybe they can board wipe me. Even though it may not look as nice as saying, hey, I can play this big Draven and then just attack for 3 extra damage, you have to remember that anytime you pass priority to your opponent, they can also put down a blocker, or they can play a kill spell, or they can play a slow spell. They just get a whole bunch of opportunities opened up to them, whereas if you could just open attack sometimes, you're guaranteed a certain amount of damage, or you say, hey, you have to answer these things that are killing you, and then if they answer those, then you get to play your big Draven, and let's say your opponent just had a Vengeance in their hand, and you're attacking with 2 3/2s, your opponent gets scared and they say, oh no, I don't want to take 6 damage, I have to kill off a 3/2, then now boom, you just used his Vengeance, now he can't kill your Draven. And just stuff like that. Always look for ways to maximize your damage output. The best card in your deck is Boom Kuroki, so always try to have one on turn 2. The ideal curve for this deck is going to be Legion Rearguard on turn 1, Boom Kuroki on turn 2, and then Draven on turn 3, and then every turn after that you kind of just want to draw burn spells and just hit your opponent in the face with them. Look at every single unit as direct damage. For instance, I don't consider Grenadier a 2-mana 3/1 creature. Instead, I look at it as a 2-mana, it blocks a unit, and then it deals 2 damage. Same with Cast Salesman. Cast Salesman is just a 3-mana, deal 2 damage, block 3 creatures. So when calculating your damage to see if you have enough for lethal or to see how much damage you're off of lethal, don't forget to include these creatures that you might have on the board. And this also goes for your direct damage units like Boom Kuroki and then the 2/1 that have attack triggers. So it doesn't matter if they get blocked. It doesn't matter if your opponent has 6 units on the board. You're guaranteed 2 damage from Boom Kuroki's attack, or you're guaranteed 1 damage from the Saboteur's attack. And while we're on the topic of blocking, always try to use Cast Salesman and Grenadier on defensive turns, like whenever your opponent's trying to develop their board. If your opponent's playing Bannerman and they try to develop their board on, let's say, like turn 5, you can use a Cast Salesman and sometimes save up to 10 life, depending on how many units are on board. Because a 0-1 can block a Garen, that saves you 5 life. A 0-1 can block a Bannerman, that saves you 3 life. And then you have the actual Cast Salesman that can block any other unit and potentially trade. So those cards are really, really good on defense and really key in some matchups to make sure you don't die to creatures attacking you while you're just trying to live for 1 or 2 more turns to burn them out. Shadow Isles will just farm you for free ranks. So if you see a lot of Karina control or War Mother control or really any Shadow Isle deck that's playing Grasp of the Undying and Withering Whales, like Spooky Karma, Spooky Ezreal, literally anything that plays Shadow Isle and gains life, just probably don't play this deck at the moment. Maybe switch to something else that's good into those decks and then come back to this Draven Burn deck later. But if all you're seeing is Karina decks for the past 5 matches, probably get off of the deck because you're just going to keep losing. Or maybe you can win. It's not impossible to win. It's just going to be really, really hard and really, really close. Whereas you could just play a different deck and make the same matchup a lot easier. And the last tip we're going to go through here is the biggest one that actually surprises a lot of people when I'm coaching them and when I give them tips when they ask me on stream, is I almost never, ever, ever use burn spells on creatures unless it guarantees you advantage or if it's to save your life that turn. This means I don't get excited anything that's about to kill one of my creatures. I don't use a Mystic Shot on anything that's about to trade into one of my creatures. Usually if I'm making an attack that trades my creatures into theirs, I'm doing it intentionally to push damage for one way or another. The only exception to this, like I said, is if you can guarantee more damage or if it's to save your life. Like if your opponent is literally swinging for lethal and you can kill one creature to live and then kill them next turn. So, for instance, if your opponent has a 1/1 spider on the field, but they have no mana left, so you know that they can literally do nothing, and you can kill the 1/1 spider with a Blade's Edge to guarantee your Draven to hit them, to stop their 1/1 spider from blocking your Draven, then you just turned your Blade's Edge into 3 damage because Draven is hitting. But if your opponent can either play another unit afterwards, so let's say you Blade's Edge the spider, but they have enough mana to play another one, then all you did was just lose out on 1 damage because your Draven's still not getting through. And nothing happened except your opponent was able to get a card out of your hand and save 1 life. Or save however much life you used on burn spells. This is why people say, whenever I attack with Draven, and my opponent blocks with the Fiora and then goes to barrier it, or blocks with a 3/4 unit, and I can shoot the unit in response to the quick attack and still save my Draven, but is it really worth it at that point? Because you need every single point of damage in this deck. Every point of damage matters. And I cannot stress that enough. Almost every single game will feel like it comes down to less than 3 hit points worth of damage, and maybe 1 card off of damage, and you think, man, if only I didn't, Mystic Shot this unit on turn 2, or if only I didn't get excited this unit for no reason on turn 3, then you could have that 2 to 3 points of damage. And the next section is going to be what to do on each stage of the game. Like I said, this is going to be a new section I'm going to start bringing and see if you guys like it. So let me know in the comments below if you enjoy this and if you want me to do this for all of the decks in the future. So in the early game, so turns 1 through 3. For turns 1 through 3, you really want to play a creature on each turn and then attack each combat you get to get as much combat damage in as possible. After turn 3, if you're playing against a creature deck, you probably won't have any good attacks since all of your creatures are going to be smaller. So you'll just have to use your units to block while you burn their face for the next 2 turns to win. If you're playing against a non-creature deck, like for instance Ezreal Karma or War Mother's Control, then go ahead and just keep attacking as long as it's valuable. Don't suicide units unless it's promising you damage. So this means don't just shoot your unit into one of his units to get in no damage just because you can. It'd be a lot easier to just save your health by blocking with the 2-1. Even if it's just to get 1 damage in, you have to ask, is it really worth it? Is it worth shooting my Saboteur in for 1 damage while my opponent's still at like 10 health when the next turn he's going to swing at me with a 5/5? Like, I'd much rather just save the 5 life. That could buy you an extra turn to draw the extra damage you need to win the game. Mid-game, so turns 4 through 6. For these turns, you're going to want to try and end the game. You're really just going to mostly be blocking here with your Grenadiers and your Cast Salesman to try and buy the final turns and get through the final points of damage. while you draw your decimates and play your decimates for 2 turns in a row to deal the last bit of burn damage. And then if the game goes past turn 5, late game, turns 5 and plus, pray. Now the part of the video that everyone cares about, the Mulligan guide. So the mulligans for this deck are actually all of the same for every single matchup. The only difference is in a few matchups, you're going to want more specific cards, and we're going to cover those matchups here right after this part. But in every single matchup, you're just going to want to mulligan for a 1-mana creature, a Boom Kuroki, and a Draven. And this means you mulligan your entire hand away to try and find those 3 units. This is because, like I said, the curve earlier is you just want to play your 1-mana creature on 1, your Boom Crew on 2, and your Draven on 3, and this allows you to get hopefully 2 good attacks in before you have to start burning them out and using your burn spells. So, if you don't see the deck you're looking for and the matchups I'm about to list for the specific rules, just go ahead and use the rules I just said for your mulligan. So just to clarify, the mulligan plan is the same for every single matchup. You just want to mulligan your entire hand away to try and find a 1-drop, Boom Kuroki, and Draven. And the cards I'm about to name in these matchups ahead are just in addition to those 3 cards. So Bannerman. Bannerman, you want to look for at least 1 Cast Salesman and 1 Grenadier. And Spider Aggro, you want to try and get your Static Shock. And Ash Nox midrange, you're going to want your Cast Salesman and Grenadier. And in the Draven Jinx discard or the Mirror Match burn deck, you want to draw your Static Shock and your Cast Salesman. For almost every single mid-range deck, you're just going to want your Cast Salesman and Grenadier if you end up playing against like a Mistwraith deck or some deck that I didn't name, but you can tell it's a creature deck, whether that's Undying or any type of fringe list. Just go off of these. If it's a mid-range deck, you're going to want Cast Salesman, Grenadier. If it's an aggro deck with 1 health creatures, you're probably going to want Static Shock and Cast Salesman as well. So that's going to be it. And as always, I'm going to have a full in-depth matchup guide in my Discord. So go ahead and join my Discord in the description below. I'll be posting a guide in there that has exactly what you should do and look out for and how to play versus every single S-tier matchup at the moment. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to leave a like on the video if you did. Make sure to comment to tell me what deck you want to see next on the deck guide for dummies. Go follow me on Twitch. I've been streaming daily on there since this whole epidemic has started, so I've been really grinding on Twitch, so you can always catch me on there daily. And subscribe here on YouTube because I'm putting out videos at least two a week, sometimes more than that. And that's going to be it. I'll see you guys in the next video.